We're back again. Me and Mr. Meade is over here ready to talk to the people, man. And we've got Sefena and Vicky both coming to kind of broaden the conversation a little bit more. You know, me and Meade are quite similar and different all at the same time. So we want to get some fresh minds, some fresh perspectives in there as well. And today we're going to talk about the whole statue fiasco, I'm going to call it, because, you know, we spoke about movements before as well. And one thing that I was really passionate about, I spoke about a movement serving a purpose and then building and going loads of different places with that purpose. So we're going to think about that and just, you know, throw around some ideas. But firstly, I just want to talk, well, Meade first. What do you feel, or how do you feel about these statues firstly being ripped down? Like, let's just talk about the statue that got ripped down and thrown in the back in the, you know, bottom of the river in the UK. And we'll get to America. But how does that, what do you think about that?
That statue shouldn't have been up in the first place. It's mad that it's been up there for so long. It's right that it got taken down. Probably not in the most ideal way possible. But I don't think it would have been taken down any other way. If that hadn't have happened, it wouldn't. Like, apparently they've been petitioning for it to be taken down and nothing's ever happened. So sometimes to get things rolling, you need a big kick. So that was probably the big kick it needed to get it taken down. So
does that open up for, or does it kind of set a precedent in a way that that's the way to get things done? Or like, is it going to push?
I think I think it speaks to the fact that the current democratic system, whatever you want to call it, doesn't quite work the way it's meant to, you know.
So okay, so Frisby, let me throw this to you. Okay, her name's Vicky. I call her Frisby because I tend to call people by their last name, hence the reason I call Chris Meade. But anyway, so yeah, Vicky, let me throw it to you then. So do you think this is the way people should go about doing things in terms of tearing down statues? Do you think it's necessary? Do you think it's excessive? Do you think there's better ways?
I don't think it's the right way to go about it, but it just seems to be, the only way that gets heard at the moment is by them sort of doing that, ripping it down, to be perfectly honest.
Weird, isn't it? It's weird. I get it, but then look how many statues and historic statues where there's slave traders in this country. Should they all be just getting? Should we just like push them all over them? Like, what's the answer? Is that the answer? That's interesting. So Sefena, in America, obviously I'm talking more about what's over here, but in America, it's a similar thing happening. But I feel like that's more of an authorized movement, as in it seems like it's not so much of a brutal knockover of a statue. They're actually taking them out the correct way. No,
some states have been removing them overnight. Like, let's just remove this because we already know what's about to happen. Right, some have been chopping off the statues' heads, pushing them over. Like Christopher Columbus was pushed over as well. So it's some states who were smart enough to say, listen, we already know which way it's going to go. Let's just remove it, have removed it. And the others got it knocked over.
I mean, I don't know. Like, for me, I understand why it's necessary. I really understand why it's necessary. But are we, or I suppose the concern is it taking it away from what the cause is? Is causing this kind of, because we're quite split on opinion on terms of people like, oh, just leave it where it should be, or move it to a museum, or just throw it in the bottom of a river. It's all kind of split at the moment. So is it causing divide in something that I would say most people agree with in the whole Black Lives Matter movement? I say most people with a brain cell, because to be honest, I haven't heard many people who are, you know, can articulate themselves very well and are of an intelligent background kind of go up and go, oh, Black Lives don't matter. That's stupid. But obviously some people will say that. But what I'm saying is, like, is this the right is this going to be a distraction from what we're trying to achieve? I don't know. What do you think? Vicky, what do you think? Is it a distraction?
It's a good question. I think it kind of is, and I think it's just something that people are taking their anger out on statues rather than maybe they don't feel there's any other way to move forward with it or how to voice themselves. But I must admit, when you did that poll, I was one of the ones of the opinion that they should be left where they are. I don't see statues as being like glorifying people. I just see it as a way of educating people, whatever the story is, whether it's good or bad. People, it's, you know, if you're going out and about, you see these statues and you're educated about what they mean, good and bad. It's a way of passing it on and educating everybody else. Once they're all taken down, people forget. They're stuck in museums. How many people go to museums and they're forgotten? I understand.
Well, I think Meade's got a point there. Go on.
I think that, so the problem with the statue that's in public is that you automatically assume that that is some kind of hero, someone who's contributed to society in terms of science, art, literature, whatever it is. I mean, it was in Bristol, wasn't it, that statue?
Yeah, that one.
I've been there. I've been there a couple of times. I haven't seen that statue, but I would never have thought there would be a statue of a slave trader up in a major city in the UK. Like, if someone had said that to me before this happened, I'd be like, no, of course not. It's insane. It's insane that that's up there now. Especially he didn't even do anything. He just murdered loads of people. Like, it's not like Winston Churchill's a bit more controversial because, you know, he's a war hero. He's a hero of the country, but he's also he had some pretty messed up views and stuff. He's more of a complicated character.
Right.
This guy was a straight up just pure slave trader. If you're having it in the public view, where people aren't necessarily, you know, you walk past a statue, not necessarily to learn, it's just, it's there. It's part of the culture. It's what Britain is proud of. That's what you're displaying. It should be in a museum where that you go to be educated. You go to sit there and you go to learn and make a judgment for yourself. Like, you know, whether this person was good or bad, it's just learning. And people should go to museums more. That's just a separate point. But I think when you put it in public, you're automatically saying something like, we are proud of this. This is something, this is a part of who we are, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I kind of get that, and saying it's acceptable as well. I do kind of get that. The more I'm learning though on, obviously, topics that, as you know, as days go by and I'm reading more and educating more, so, you know, my opinions are changing a little, but it's,
of course.
I think there's a strong point there in the whole, it's a culture. So you assume that is the culture based on that person. And one thing that I always think that statues do is it like you say, it's heroic. Sorry, it's glorifying a person. But then when you glorify a person, then really you have to glorify that person in a rounded view, in their entirety. You can't kind of glorify them in one and then say they're a mass murderer in the other. Like, it doesn't quite make sense. Whereas if you had a plaque, for instance, that kind of listed all their contributions, because it's not an iconic person, it's just kind of listing how much they've done maybe for the country in different ways. I think it's less glorified and more of a historic kind of artifact or something that people can kind of go to and be like, oh, I appreciate he did this. I mean, I think that's what it is. I think culturally, if you can feel the pain somewhat of your ancestors or, you know, your grandparents, or whatever the case may be, walking past someone who contributed to so much destruction within your community, I can understand why. I mean, I'm talking from quite playing a devil's advocate kind of position, because I'm kind of either way. It doesn't make a massive difference to me. To be honest, personally, I'm just kind of like, well, whatever. But I can understand why people are upset. And maybe I don't feel upset because I'm not educated as much. Maybe I should be more upset, you know, because my views of Black Lives Matter before I've really started deeply thinking about it has kind of changed. As in, I'm a lot more like, wow, this is not right,
Right.
basically.
Right.
But then that's good. It's educating, which is what they're setting out to do.
But this is the thing. So what is a statue? Is it an education, a statue of someone? Is that for education? Because let's be honest, if we moved it to a museum, how many of those people fighting for it are going to go and visit it to go and educate themselves or their children on it? How many of those people that went and protested in the middle of London shouting all lives matter are going to go to have they ever even been to the National History Museum? Sorry, you know what I mean? Like, it's, what is it there for? Sefena, what do you think? Like, why is this such a big problem, and what is the answer for this?
I think with, especially, remember, we have to look at this historically. A lot of times when you, let's say, conquer a place, you put your statue there as a reminder of who's in charge. You know what I mean? And a lot of the times it comes with a very oppressive, although generations have passed and it might not be as oppressive to us, oftentimes when you put that statue up, it's saying something. It's literally pointing out, know your place. It's a know your place situation. This is, or who we look up to, or who, like Meade said, who we look up to as heroes. Right. And so I'm okay with it being in museums. I'm okay with us educating. I mean, I can't speak for everybody. I know that everybody probably doesn't go to a museum, but my mom was religious in bringing us to museums when we were younger and seeing different places and learning history. So she was a little different in the way that we were brought up. But I just think that, especially over here and in the South, when they had the war to kind of let the slaves go, not let them all go, those statues were put up in places of, you know, especially poverty, where it's a reminder of, listen, this is our hero, and you need to know your place. So
that flag in the ground type vibe.
Right, exactly. So it's really about knowing history and understanding motive. And then, you know, because sometimes history will give you a little bit of context. You might not know everything that's in a man's heart, but you can kind of navigate a decision from there as well. But I'm all for it being in a museum or in the books. You know what I mean?
I mean, back to Winston Churchill. I don't know. It's kind of this whole. It is the culture. Again, we're kind of back to the culture of, oh, where would we have been if it weren't for this man?
Right.
And all of this kind of vibe. But then you kind of go, the whole India famine and the whole. I've
got to say that the historians are divided on how responsible he was for that kind of thing.
Well,
but that whole Bengali famine thing is a bit. It's not clear how much the local authorities are responsible, how much people are hoarding, how much there's only one. I think there's one recorded instance of Churchill actually even talking about it on the decisions they made.
But
he had racist views. He had racist views.
Even that I have a problem on, because everything else is so well documented. Why is it not documented? It feels like it's quiet for a reason, because we get told even in that
it wasn't
history,
as important.
Well, that's the thing. So that says it's precedence in itself. It wasn't.
Yeah, but you got this is where I was with the whole Winston Churchill thing. Was that hero worship is such a big thing in our society, right? But we all know that people are people, and they're complicated, and they're products of their time. You know, people do good and bad things. Winston Churchill is a hero of the country because of what he did in World War II. But as a man, he was very complex. He was brought up in the British elite, where they were taught that as a white European man, you are preeminent amongst all races. You know, you're genetically better, blah, blah, blah. You're taught that from a young age. So he believed it. But it doesn't detract from the fact that he did lead this country to victory over a very oppressive regime that murdered millions of people. So you have to take the good and the bad, and you have to say, it's just, this is history. It's not, you don't have to say this man was your hero or a hero. He was a man. He did these things.
So is a statue in the streets out of place then? Because we're now, like you say, we're talking heroes. We're not talking about history.
Yeah. If you look at Greek stuff, if you look at like ancient Greek and the way they put statues of gods, like things that weren't real. They represented emotions within people. They weren't, Hercules, a mythical figure. It wasn't real people.
Yeah.
These are real people, and we have to. The problem I think people have is making them gods. You're making people like gods. You're not giving people a chance to say, okay, this is the good and the bad. Take it all. And that's bad, because then people think that everyone is either good or everyone is either bad. There's no in between, which is what everyone is.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. How much impact does this make though? Like, whether it stays or whether it goes, how much impact does this make to Black Lives Matter, really? Like, and if it, say they go, say, which they're not going to in the UK for sure, but say they do, is that going to cause like a real strong divide for the people that think they should just stay in their place? Is it all those people sitting on a fence that's kind of like, oh, I was kind of supporting Black Lives Matter, but now, because I feel like the narrative is being moved towards that. They kind of try and throw things out there to divide, to make the movement weaker, so it's manageable. Also, what happens is, like for instance, non-stop, all these programs are getting thrown out there. Oh, they didn't display a black person in the right way, and they didn't do this, and they didn't do that, and this was probably racist, and it's all just there so that the average person who really liked that show goes, oh, you see what this movement's doing now? They're not showing this show. It's stupid. It's ridiculous, and it kind of divides that kind of opinion, I think. So, is a statue being up or down really, for the damage it could cause, necessary?
Well, let's be honest.
Needed, or what do you think?
Let's be honest. Like over here, you guys would be able to speak better for what's going on over there. But with the Black Lives Matter protests over here, it was put out in articles that people from different states were coming in and infiltrating it. And a lot of people linked back to white supremacist groups were there on purpose, vandalizing property, setting fire to police stations. So you see what I'm saying? You have people there with good intent trying to get something done. And then you're going to have people who come in there with an agenda to say, hey, let's contaminate this so that people get frustrated. And so I really do feel like in those moments, you have to keep your eye on the prize, and you have to learn how to take the meat and spit out the bones and say, okay, well, this is, what the agenda is. This is what we really need to get done. And know the difference between a protester, a looter, a rioter. You know what I mean? Protesters actively calling out those who are there for the wrong reason. And unfortunately, sometimes pulling a statue down gets people to realize, oh, you know what? They're not playing. You know what I mean? They're tired. We've got to do something. So,
I mean, what's refreshing is, to be honest with you, even watching that statue get pulled down, there was a lot of white people pulling it down.
I know.
So that in itself, because I think it's one thing, it's very easy to kind of label black people angry, and there's years of frustration and being treated. So them reacting in that way is kind of like, oh yeah, but they're angry. Yeah, well, of course they are, all that. But watching white people going, nah, this is wrong,
right,
and they're pulling it down, I think is more of a powerful message. Personally, I can't say I was like I said, the statues impactfully. I mean, I don't live in Bristol, but it didn't really impact me too much. But watching it go, I was happy for, but it was more that as a reason. I was more happy that everyone was unified in the idea that this was wrong, or the idea that this person shouldn't be glorified because of the wrong that he's done. And that's what I kind of want to get at. I think everyone's kind of focusing on the statue itself. At the end of the day, who cares? It's an object. Like, what do you weigh more important? Now, the example I use is, if taking down a statue will make the person that you love or care about more comfortable living in this country, in this world, that's a very small price to pay. So when I think about it, a lot of the people that, in my opinion, not always the case, and I'm not going to label everyone, but in my opinion, a lot of the people who want to see it up don't integrate themselves in what today's society is as much as they would think. They don't love many Black people or love many Indian people or love, and to no fault of their own necessarily, might be their demographics that they live in, it might be any reason, whatever. But I know, because I have loads of white people in my life that I love, that if the shoe was on the other foot and this statue causes you offense, put it in a museum. This isn't a hard choice for me. Put it in a museum. It's a hunk of metal and stone, and who cares? Put it in a museum. I will go and educate myself if I want to, but if that's a problem, something staring at you, or you feel like it's kind of oppressing you further, or like you say, that whole kind of flag in the ground kind of vibe, then I don't understand what the big deal is. Just take the statue down, and that's it. But that's me. That's just where I'm coming from. But has anyone got any different views? I mean, that's me. I just don't see what the big fuss is about in regard to the statue. If you want to preserve it, preserve it. Take it down carefully and put it in a container and preserve it. Like, but what I'm saying is, putting it in the middle of a city, it's kind of hard to.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, because who's going to be celebrating it? The whole society can't celebrate it. So who's going to be taking pictures in it and being like, oh, look, who goes to, you go to certain places in the world and you take pictures in front of monuments, but as a Black person, who's coming to go and take a picture in front of Winston Churchill? Like, hey, look at me, Winston Churchill. Like, no one's doing it. It doesn't represent everyone anymore, where I think there was a time where it did. I mean, This is my opinion. Is anything am I missing the point? This is just what I think.
Because I think people would disagree with the statue, not because of who it is, but because of the way it was taken down. Like a lot of people are temperamentally very focused on law and order, this is the way things are done, and this is and this is just a bit of freaks them out a little bit. I think another thing is the authorities don't want to take it down, because you take that one down, then there's another one, and there's another one, and then it turns out, Queen Victoria is a bit of a bitch. Let's take that one down, and all of a sudden, British elite and stuff. It is a very good reason why they have statues and stuff up, and it's to remind you of who you are and the glorious imperial past and all that sort of thing, man. There's a very good reason why those statues are up there, and there's a reason why I don't want to take them down.
It feels like I feel like I get the impression that we're just really good at lying and chatting rubbish, which makes sense.
That's
because
true.
I'm not going to be.
It's a story. People need a story to tell themselves.
You've seen how big we are on the map, yeah? And we took over a quarter of the world. So I feel like culturally, we just know how to push things in certain directions. And politics, I mean, we must be good at it. Why do we have so much power, yet we are a dot on the map? It does not make sense. It does not make sense at all. America makes sense. It's huge. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a lot of it. I think it's the ignorance, which kind of transcends culturally from the ignorance of the people. And when I say the people, I'm talking myself as well, because.
But we have to remember too, whenever a story is told, especially from the victor's perspective, it's always going to be different from the victor to the oppressor, or the oppressed, the one who's repressed. It's never going to be the same. So the victor's going to say, I went in there and
I helped them. I
tore this down and they needed my help and blah blah blah, and they died off because of their own because the disease had nothing to do with me. They just And then the oppressed is going to be like, well, they brought disease and we opened our doors to them and they took over our land. This is humanity. This is exactly what we do.
What's funny about that, Sefena? What's funny about that is that what's funny about that is I did history at GCSE, and then I did A-level history. So I did 16 to 18, I did my A-level history.
Yeah.
GCSE, it was all glorious, World War II, this, that, we're all good. Got to adult history. It was all about how the British Empire fell. And I was like, man, we suck. No one else, like only if you did.
I think he cut out.
I think, yeah, broke up a little bit. But yeah, I see what you're saying though. But then I think there's a responsibility with delivering history as well, because like you say, you can push the narrative. So instead of saying, you know, how we found it, you got to tell the whole story. You can't tell half. I feel like that's what we're good at doing. We're good at telling the half that makes us look good.
Right? Yeah.
And not tell the hard reality and the truth. And we haven't faced up to it. The difference is Germany, outside of America, was the biggest protest in the world outside of America, because they've had to face up to their rubbish. They've had to face up to their wrong.
Right.
I feel like they're educated more as a nation in regards to they had the whole picture because they can't escape it.
Right.
Hitler was too big of a...
Yeah, you know I mean? There's a big thing. There's loads of stories posted online of young German kids finding out about the Holocaust. Like, oh, I was 7 years old and I found this book and it told me, and it's really impactful. They find out that they were the bad guys and stuff. But it makes them really aware as a nation of like how bad it can get.
Right.
And I feel like that's what we're missing. I feel like the whole, like, people are literally defending the British Empire. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm impressed with what was done with the British Empire, simply because I understand that we are this big on the map and we took over a quarter of the world. That's ridiculous, yeah? And that's impressive on anyone's standards. I don't care, yeah?
Right.
But the whole full picture is we did horrible things to all of these nations. And that's what it is. That's the balance. That is the balance. Like, that is the good and the bad. But the problem is, the good is always outweighing the bad, when really the full picture is, I'm humbled by where we've come from, but these people were treated like these, and we live amongst these people now. We can't be this person. We have to be different. And like you say, in Germany, I feel like that's the case. They've had to own up to it. And don't get me wrong, like, Germany conquered a lot as well, but they know the bad too.
Right.
And concentration camps in Kenya, just because we didn't bring it on our soil, I think it's just because, like you say, England is just very good at politics. So they didn't bring those concentration camps onto their soil. They said, no, we'll do it where you are. There's a war's going on. So no one knows what's happening.
Right. But it's the same thing with the protests, isn't it? It's the same exact idea. Let me just infiltrate what you already have going on, and nobody knows the difference. It's the same. It's the same thing.
It's hard though, but what, you know, there's so much history. What do you teach? You know, and you obviously don't want to traumatize these kids, you know, with concentration camps and stuff. And you also,
the thing is, it's so far-fetched from today, the 21st century. It's so far-fetched. Traumatize them, educate them. I think we're scared. Like, we try and protect so much and try and create this bubble around children and then they find out in drips and drabs. They don't get the full picture because they get a little bit from their friend that said this, and a little bit from his dad, and a little bit from his granddad that said this, and a little bit, and then they piece it together themselves.
Right.
Whereas if they knew the full picture, and then you give it to them, whichever way they go, it kind of decides on them as a person. It has nothing to do with the information that they've received.
Right.
So I think we need to kind of face up to the harsh truths, the good and the bad, and then let people decide.
Right.
If we do the good and the bad, and everyone knows about the bad of the British Empire and the good, and then people still want to have, you know, majority or whatever, still want to have these statues, then that makes sense. That's a choice.
Let's even look at the founding fathers for the US, right? You flee a country because you don't like being controlled, only to come to a new country and control others. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want it for me, but I don't mind doing it.
Yeah, that's kind of humanity too. Yeah, for real.
It's like, okay. And I think it was Britain that actually called out the hypocrisy when they were like, you're fighting for freedom, but yet you have slaves and you don't treat them right. yet you know what I mean? It's not recognizing your hypocrisy. You know what I mean?
So, just really quickly then, Meade, statues, up, down, in a museum.
In a museum, man. Don't forget your history.
Is
Don't
anyone
forget
different?
what's going on.
Frisby, what's your stance on this? Up, down, or in a museum?
I sort of change. I still torn, because if it comes to something, say like, so like the head of scouting, like Sir Baden Powell, whatever his name is. Now I would look at a statue of him. Is wrong, because you're looking at, yes, he set up this group for kids, but then he turns out to be a paedophile. So there shouldn't be one there. But that's because I know all about that, so that should be down. But I think it's just I don't feel educated enough to. So I think maybe museum.
Should we even have people up?
Yes.
Like you say, we're all flawed.
Yes.
We're all flawed. If there was a statue, of Anthony Joshua, there was a point in time where he was the nation's wonder boy. Like everywhere, he couldn't do anything but, oh, Anthony Joshua, he's amazing, heavyweight champion, bringing it back to the UK. Oh man, he's great. And then he does one speech, and everyone's like, he's a horrible person. I reckon he's racist. So it's kind of like
that just shows you how fickle it all is.
Exactly. So then,
but you should remember, like, this is a lesson. Like, all of this is a lesson for people. It's all this. People can be both good and bad. It's that famous quote, Solzhenitsyn's quote. The line between good and evil is not between nations, religions, borders, whatever. It's between every human heart, right? It runs down every human heart. You are both good and bad, and that should be the lesson we're teaching to all the kids. And that's why we should keep statues and put them into museums, and so kids can go, okay, Winston Churchill was a bit of a dick here, but he's also done this. It's really good. It means that, you know what, I can mess up, I can be a bit of a dick, but I can also do good things as well.
It's learning from past mistakes to improve what's, that's the important thing here. It's getting people to see and learn and do better.
Okay, on the last point then, so can you do those things that you just explained with these monuments, statues, or whatever, bang smack in the middle of the city? Can you do those things kind of in a way that's not biased? You know what I mean? If you've got it outside of Parliament or whatever, it kind of seems a little bit biased. But in a museum, it's an unbiased mind, because it's amongst everything else that's an artifact or a historic view. So can you do it? What do you think? Can you do it outside of a museum and be, really fair and subjective?
So only if you've got you've got the information to be able to pass it on. Whereas in a museum, you're going to learn that information and pass it on to whoever you're with as well. Whereas if you're just walking down the street, if you don't have that information, you can't pass it on. Do you see what I mean? So I could only give maybe part of a story here, whereas in a museum,
I think that's the problem.
You could read the full.
Yeah, I think
lack of education to be able to pass it on.
Yeah, I think that's kind of solidified my view on. I think it should be in a museum. I think it's something we should learn. I think we need to learn about everything. I think there's some really ugly parts. So there's, like you say, there's always a lot of goods as well, and sometimes it comes from the same person. It needs to be told. We need to understand it, but it doesn't need to be in our face. That's where I stand. But yeah, nice chat, guys.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Sefena. Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you, Meade.